Kevin, I want to start the show with something I didn't expect to start the show talking about just a couple of days ago. And that was the recent social media reporting surrounding Top Rank. Um, People in boxing probably caught wind of this during the week where Rick Glazer, who is a longtime boxing person, boxing supplier, whether it's opponents, sparring partners, whatever. He's been involved in boxing for a long time. He put out on social media that Top Rank was in the final stages of a sale that would have Top Rank bought by Endeavor, which is the parent company of UFC, WWE, and folded into that umbrella. Now, that was subsequently denied quite strongly by all the parties involved. Dana White denied it on social media. I know he talked to you. Todd DeBuff denied it. Bob Arum denied it. Pretty much everyone that is connected on a high level to this this report denied the accuracy of it. So, having done some reporting of your own,
Yes.
what do you make of this? Do you think there is any truth to the possibility that Top Rank could be swallowed up by Endeavor?
Well, this had been going around maybe a year ago, right? And Top Rank had a deck out there potentially to sell the company. Dana was talking about getting into boxing at that time. And they're, so I don't want to say this part is accurate because the longtime feelings between Top Rank and UFC, especially Dana White toward Top Rank. But he said, I would never buy them. This was a year ago. I would never buy Top Rank because it's a disaster, right? And then they just said basically financially, it wouldn't make sense for them to do it. Now, it does make sense on one hand, right? I mean, they already have a deal with ESPN, which is coming up though. And that has to be considered when you consider whether this is an accurate report or not. In 2025, their deal with ESPN is coming up, meaning UFC's. Top Ranks is right around the same time. So what would be the point of them acquiring the company right now? I do not believe that there's anything going on at the moment. They just acquired the WWE and they created a company called TKO, which is actually the parent company of the UFC and WWE right now. And would it be out of the realm of possibility for them to acquire Top Rank or another boxing promoter or two and do this down the road? I think it might make sense for them, but not now. I think that, right now they got off to kind of a rough start, which is picked up with the WWE acquisition. And I think going forward, they want to get that house in order. And I think it will be in order fairly soon. And then they can think about it. But there's nothing going on from everybody I have talked to and everything I would think is realistic. I don't think anything is going on there.
Yeah, these denials were pretty strong from all the parties involved. And I wonder if they would be quite so strong if there was some truth to it. All that being said, even if there's not truth to it in the moment,
Right.
I agree with you. I think there can be truth to it
Sure.
in the very near future for a few reasons. One, as you pointed out, Top Rank has been for sale in the past. Like, this is not some out of nowhere reporting
Right.
that Top Rank is up for sale. They've explored it. Yeah, it is recently, a few years ago, like when DAZN was spending a lot of money, there was some conversation about DAZN getting into the Top Rank business and buying in to Top Rank. Other companies have kicked around the idea of buying Top Rank. I know PBC had talked about getting into some kind of partnership with Top Rank. So everybody's kind of kicked the tires on buying Top Rank, in part because Bob Arum is 92 years old. And while Bob is more of a figurehead now than what he used to be, Bob's probably the biggest reason Top Rank still exists in the form that it exists in. Because look, Todd DeBuff, the president, is more of a television guy. He wants to be in that part of the business. Still have good boxing people, Carl Moretti, Bruce Trampler, among others, Brad Goodman. Like, there's really top level boxing people within that company. But if Bob were not there, I wonder what Top Rank would be, or how long
Yeah.
Top Rank would be owned by the current people that own. So that's number one. Number two, Dana White has long professed a desire to get into the boxing business, to the point where when I was over at that UFC offices a couple of years ago, Kevin, I'm sure you've seen the same thing. Like, he had an entire wing built out for boxing staff. Like, he had offices there that he was telling me were specifically designed for, boxing executives to be there. Now, that was a few years ago, back when times were different. But this current model with the people that are involved here, Nick Khan is now involved in all this. Now, Nick Khan is a longtime agent. He used to work for CAA, did the deal with Top Rank and ESPN, and has a strong love and affection for boxing. He was once Freddie Roach's agent,
Pacquiao's manager.
Pacquiao, like he's been in the boxing business forever. One of the smartest guys too that you'll come across in the boxing space. He is the president of WWE, which now is in a partnership with UFC and Endeavor and everything that goes, goes along with. So having Nick Khan there tells me that the interest in boxing is real, because I think Nick Khan's interest in boxing is real. I think he does.
Well, I think you're making a leap there. So I don't think that. So let me just interrupt you. I don't think Nick Khan was brought in to help facilitate any.
No. But I think because he's there, it helps.
He's there. I think is just coincidental.
Well, maybe, but it does make it more realistic to be properly involved with boxing when you've got someone who understands the boxing space in the same way that Nick understands the boxing space. Dana White does not understand the boxing space. He is great in the mixed martial arts space, but boxing is an entirely different animal altogether. Nick Khan understands that. So
I would disagree with that contention too. I mean, I think he understands the space that they're in. I just think he looks at it, and he's been proven successful. You're not going to really be profitable in that space the way it's run right now. And Dana White is not about running a promotion to get patted on the back and, hey, you did a great job of selling boxing. Dana White is, in it to make money. And I think that, he feels like the way boxing is, he loves boxing, right? You and I both know that. A lot of the boxing fans dislike him because they think he hates boxing and he takes shots at it. But I know, like, I talk to him when big fights come up, who are you betting on? What do you think? And we talk about boxing matches all the time. He loves it. That was his first thing. But I think he just feels business-wise, it's an abysmal business the way it has been run. And so it's difficult to make money in it right now.
It's very difficult to make money right now. All I'm saying is I think Nick understands the nuances of it, the inner workings of it, a lot better than Dana does at this point. And that's not a knock on Dana. It's just that Nick has been more involved in it in more recent past than Dana has. Not that he doesn't love it. And believe me, every time I've talked to Dana, the passion is real. He watches boxing every single week. He's into it. He would like to see it fixed. He would like to be the one to fix it. His involvement with Callum Walsh, I think, is a net positive for boxing. I just think Nick understands it a little bit better and understands the complexities of doing deals in it a little bit better. And that's what that is the asset of. The complicated part of all this is that Top Rank really isn't worth a lot, honestly. Like, its library is worth a lot, right? Like, its collection of old fights, all the fights they did from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, that is worth real money, because you can get paid off that. If you acquire that, you can get paid off that in perpetuity, for generations to come. That's worth something. Other than that, Kevin, it's not worth a heck of a lot, because the fighter contracts are, quite frankly, not worth a heck of a lot. Like, how much is the contract for how much is the contract for Teofimo Lopez really worth? Shakur Stevens' contract is coming up. How much is that right now really worth? Some of the young guys they have on their roster, Jared Anderson, Keyshawn Davis, like, how much are those contracts really worth? So finding a price that makes sense for Top Rank and for Endeavor might be a little bit tricky, I would think, because I just don't know how much that company is worth outside of what its library has value.
Well, that's what, there was just a recent, and I don't want to say sale, acquisition in MMA. The Professional Fighters League, which has a deal on ESPN, acquired Bellator, which had been on Showtime and was owned by Paramount. And everybody referred to it as the sale. And it was not a sale. They acquired assets of the company for no money. No money exchanged hands. And I think, that shows you sort of what the path forward would be in this. The other thing reason, Chris, I want to say was why I think it may not be accurate at this time, or probably is not accurate at this time, is Dana's vehemence about, no, he is now the chief executive officer of the UFC and of TKO. And if he is saying publicly on a publicly traded company, no, we're not doing this, and that's a lie, then I think that gets them into trouble, with the federal government, right? I mean, they can't just, they're not an independent company that can buy what they want or not. They're a publicly traded company now. And so what they say publicly affects investors. And as a result of that, I just don't think it is. And it was funny because when after I talked to Dana and Todd, and I put out on a message on social media about it on Christmas night, people so want to believe this that one guy says, well, Todd says we're not for sale now, but yeah, that could be because the company's already been sold. And so technically they're not for sale. Well, I think if a company was already sold and the transaction of that ilk that would happen, it would not, number one, it would not close on Christmas night. And we would have heard about it had it closed in the days prior to Christmas. So I think it's really something that it's an interesting thing to talk about. It's a story that I think, it was just like, when are Mayweather and Pacquiao going to fight, right? You were around during that. And a million times I saw people write, and I had to write stories shooting a lot of this down. Sources tell me the Mayweather Pacquiao fight is done. And then 2 years later, it got done. And that person who wrote in, 2013 that the fight was done. See, I was right. And, that I think that's the kind of situation we have here. Yeah, I think it had been discussed before. I had talked to, people on both sides about it for, many times, so it wasn't a new thing. But it was not, it never moved forward. And I don't believe it's going forward right now. Now, maybe 6 months, a year from now, when contracts are different, with the networks and everything, will they consider it? Perhaps. But, I think right now there's much ado made about nothing at this point.
All right. So we both agreed that as of right now, it's not happening. Let's play this out, though. Let's play the hypothetical out. Let's say that Endeavor does acquire Top Rank. The inner workings of UFC as well as anyone. Is that a positive for boxing? Is that productive? How do you view a partnership or an acquisition by Endeavor, which would then own Top Rank Boxing, UFC, and WWE? Is that a positive?
Well, I think it'd be a shock to the system for boxing, first of all, right? I mean, and so it's going to change the way, business is done. I think that they, if they acquire a boxing company, or if they start to, they can just go promote Callum Walsh fights on UFC Fight Pass right now, and they have a huge subscriber base, and they'll make a ton of money just putting those fights up at $9.99 and doing that. But I think what Dana's plans are is, or his ambitions would be, I don't want to say plans because that makes it look like they're in the middle of doing something, but his ambitions, if he were to do this, would be to quote unquote save boxing. We're in this thing now that 2023 has been a great year. A lot of the fights that we want to see are made, but there's always still things in the road. There's roadblocks that come up to making the fights that we want to see. And, when you look where the UFC is now, not every single fight ever gets made, but the vast majority of the fights that people want to see get made and are delivered, and usually in a short time period. And that's what we want in boxing, because that's how you build stars, right? Why did Oscar De La Hoya become so big, especially on his buildup? Oscar became big, and I was there from his pro debut. He fought often, and once he became of a certain level, he was fighting increasingly good talent every time out. He fought the first time for his world title, not that good of an opponent, right? Johnny Bradall. But each time it picked up. And then once there were elite opponents out there, all he cared about is he didn't care about who the opponent was. Does it make money? Does it make financial sense? Does it make business sense? And, obviously they would say it did. He took the fights. And I think that's kind of what, what the UFC, what Dana White would want to do with boxing if he got it. He wouldn't want to sit here and have this long build to with a Devin Haney Gervonta Davis fight. It would drive him nuts. He would go crazy to try to go through all this slog of, well, Gervonta is the bigger star and we're the one that make the offer. Dana would lose his marbles. He couldn't exist under that scene. But if he could, have the fighters and say, okay, we're going to fight it, on this date on March 1st, in this place, boom, and we'll have it done. That's kind of what his ambitions are, Chris. So I think that, it might be bad for boxing at first because you would get segregated. But I think if he was successful and he saw a path forward, I think it will be good for boxing because a company that is well financed and that knows how to promote. I don't think anybody can question now who is the best promoter in combat sports, and it's UFC by far, by a long shot right now, and what they do. And if they were able to add boxing into that stable, I think maybe in the short term, some boxing lifers wouldn't like it, but I think in the long term, as it played out, I think it would be a really net positive.
Yeah, and I just think that ambition is ambitious, for lack of a better word.
Right, I agree.
Because you need to do that. You need to have the same kind of market share in boxing that UFC has in mixed martial arts, and that's challenging because you would not only have to acquire Top Rank, you'd also have to acquire PBC, you'd also have to acquire Matchroom, and effectively control 85-90% of the market when it comes to top talent. I don't dispute Dana's ability to promote events. I don't dispute UFC being the biggest promotional outfit in combat sports. But just acquiring Top Rank ain't it, right? It gives you a foothold.
But just think back. What you need to think back to is the days when they were first starting, right? So when Zuffa closed the deal to buy the UFC in 2001, the biggest promoter in MMA at the time was not the UFC, it was the Pride Fighting Championship out of Japan, right? And they had all the big stars, and the media would go to Japan to cover those fights. And slowly, the UFC under Dana and Lorenzo Fertitta were able to build it and have that change. And I think that I agree with you, what you just said, but I think that would be, they can play the long game on that if they have the ability to put on the kind of fights that they want to put on. So it's going to take a sea change, not only for, the fighters themselves also have to change their mindset, right? Because if they want to truly make the big money, they have to rethink how they do things. Fighting, like the Charlo brothers, they both just fought. What was it? Once in 18 months for one of them, and once in 30 months for the other. I mean, you can't be successful when you can't have a quality boxing promotion if your best talent, your biggest name fighters are fighting that infrequently.
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. There's no doubt about that. And look, they're a multi-billion-dollar company, TKO, but they're also competing with multi-billionaires, right? Like where Len Blavatnik, who owns DAZN,
right,
which funds Matchroom and Golden Boy,
and the Saudis.
I was getting there. Like the Saudis have quite literally a bottomless well of money to do whatever they want in the sport of boxing. It's just there's so many challenges, so many pitfalls out there. I'm skeptical about their ability to ultimately do it.